Hey, tonight we're not diving into a history class. We've stumbled straight into it. You've somehow landed in medieval England, with no heads up, no manual. Just the chill, the filth, and the curious stares of strangers who know you're not from around here. This isn't the tale of knights and fairy tales. It's a world of chamber pots, stale bread, and strict customs where a wrong gesture could earn you a lashing. You'll scramble through dialects, misplace your things, and fake knowing saints you've never heard of, all just to make it one more day. If slow, immersive history helps you unwind, you're welcome to like and subscribe, only if it eases your mind. Drop a comment too, tell me your location and what time it is for you. It's strangely soothing to see how far these stories reach. So dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, and get comfortable. You're about to wake up in the wrong era. You open your eyes to stillness, not the background hum of tech or distant traffic, but real, unnerving silence. The kind of silence that only exists in a world with no lights, no cars, and no ticking clocks. Just darkness, damp air, and the soft rustle of leaves or an owl's cry. Your hands are cold. The ground is dirt. You sit up slowly, your chest tight with confusion and fear. It's black, not city night black, but pure emptiness. Slowly your eyes adjust. Trees. Moss. Maybe a faint flame flickering through crooked trees. You grab your phone. No bars, no Wi-Fi, just 3% battery and a lock screen that feels like your last tether to the life you knew. You try to stay calm. Then comes the scent, earthy, smoky, strange. Not bad. Just wild. Smoke, wet foliage, manure, and something you can't quite name. It's the smell of a raw, unfiltered world. Welcome. You're far from home. This is rural England. No signs of brick roads, no fences or chimneys, just the past. Likely the 1300s. And there's no explanation how. The time travel joke has worn thin. First rule? Stay calm. Second? Don't get spotted. Medieval folk weren't scared of strangers, but they were extremely curious. If you sound strange or look unusual, you might not get accused of sorcery, but you'll certainly attract questions, or thieves, or worse, end up in some tale you can't steer. So move quietly. The woods are dense but show signs of use. These aren't untouched forests. They've been picked over, managed. Firewood, hunting grounds for nobles, foraging spots for peasants, if permitted. But the trees aren't free. Most land was owned. Even small twigs had value. Take the wrong branch, and without proof of tenancy, you could be accused of theft. And theft here? That might cost you a hand. You inch toward the distant glow of a village still hidden behind trees. Just a few lights, maybe torches or firelit windows behind makeshift shutters. There are no bulbs, no glass panes, just wood slats or stretched animal skins. Light flickers briefly, then fades. You find a path. Not paved, not bricked. Just packed earth, cut with wagon grooves and dotted with puddles. Medieval roads weren't built for comfort. The roads weren't made for comfort, just utility. Deep ruts scar the land, often flooded, always slick, and worse after a freeze. You struggle to stay upright, your sleek, modern shoes already caked in mud. So you do the only sensible thing, take them off. The socks go too. Clothes matter here. You're wearing materials no one's ever seen. Synthetic fibers, zippers, machine stitching. Walk into town in jeans and a hoodie, and best case, They think you're from a strange, distant land. Worst case, they assume you've escaped from somewhere. So you do what any smart time traveler would. Bury your modern clothes deep in the woods. Hide your phone. Tie your hoodie around a tree. Strip down to a thermal undershirt. It looks enough like linen. You pull your hair back in a rough, rustic style. Smear some dirt on your face. Try to look hungry. There's a town gate ahead. Just before dawn. Towns in this era were gated, not to keep people in, but to keep out thieves and wandering animals. A curfew was enforced with a bell at sundown. After dark, you'd need a good reason to enter. Had you arrived earlier, you might have been turned away or fined. But now, in the blue and pink light of early morning on frost-kissed ground, the town is beginning to stir. You enter alongside others, peasants, traders, maybe pilgrims. No one pays you any mind. The street is narrow and muddy. Houses lean into the road, timber framed with walls made of wattle and daub, wooden slats packed with mud and straw. The roofs are thatched. The air is thick with the scent of smoke and animal waste. Chickens scurry across your path. You nearly step on one. People here sleep differently. Most take a first sleep. Wake up in the middle of the night for a few hours to tend the fire, pray, talk. Then they drift into a second sleep. The idea of an uninterrupted 8-hour slumber is a modern invention. You pass a blackened forge, the smell of hot iron and sweat in the air. A stable. A small food stall selling yesterday's bread and something vaguely onion-like simmering in a pot. It smells like desperation. No one greets you, a good sign. But sooner or later someone will ask, "Who are you?" In the Middle Ages, everyone belonged to someone, a household, a guild, a church parish, a trade. A lone traveler was suspicious. Without connections, you're vulnerable to crime, arrest, or worse. So you've prepared. You're a pilgrim, the safest cover. Pilgrims were everywhere and could be from anywhere. Say you're on the road to Canterbury, or Santiago de Compostela. Invent a village 400 miles away and pray no one here has a cousin there. You bow slightly when someone looks your way. Don't shake hands. That custom doesn't exist yet. Speak as little as possible. Your accent is strange, your grammar stranger. Mumble. Smile softly. Then, someone offers you bread. It's dense, dry. Mostly rye, probably mixed with barley or bean flour. But it's warm. You chew slowly, nod and thanks. You hope the act of eating makes you seem more human, less like someone who just fell from the sky. And just like that, you've made it through your first hour. But the day is only beginning. You've barely been awake an hour, and already, you've become someone else. That's how life works here. No passports. Just belonging, or pretending you do. No IDs. No background checks. Just stories. And in medieval England, your story is your shield. You need one fast. You go with the safest lie you can think of. "I'm a pilgrim," you tell a stable boy. He squints and asks where you're headed. You pause for half a breath. "Canterbury," you say. Not because you're religious, but because it's the only pilgrimage site you can name under pressure. It works. He nods solemnly and returns to mucking straw. That's it. That's your new truth now. You're a pilgrim, on your way to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket, the archbishop murdered in Canterbury Cathedral back in 1170. His martyrdom turned the city into one of Europe's most visited holy sites. Pilgrims came from everywhere, rich and poor, sick and desperate, devout and guilty, all hoping for a miracle, forgiveness, or even just a few nights of rest under the watchful eye of God. It's a good cover. Pilgrims were everywhere in the Middle Ages. They moved between towns, slept at inns and monasteries, traveled in groups when they could, and alone when they had to. Some wore scalloped shells for Santiago. Others carried staffs, or pinned tokens from previous shrines to their cloaks. Most were poor. Many were ill. A few were fugitives. All were tired. Now you are one of them. The lie isn't just for strangers, it's for yourself, too. You repeat it in your head, shaping it, smoothing the edges. You're from a distant village. You're traveling alone because your cousin got sick. You're headed to Canterbury because your brother had a dream. You're doing penance for a sin you won't name. You've practiced just enough church Latin to make your mumbled prayers sound plausible. Your story buys you shelter. A grey-robed monk at a small priory hears your tale and waves you in. He doesn't ask many questions. He doesn't seem surprised by your strange accent or your patchy knowledge of scripture. Pilgrims were expected to be odd. You say you've been walking for weeks. He believes you. Everyone looks weathered here. He shows you to your bed. Well, not a bed. More like a corner of a cold, drafty hall, crammed beside 3 other sleeping bodies. One snores like an injured bear. Another mutters nonsense in his sleep. You pull the borrowed wool cloak tighter around your shoulders and try not to think about bedbugs. Hospices and monasteries were among the few places in medieval Europe where a traveler could sleep without handing over coin. The church was both legally and spiritually obligated to offer charity to pilgrims. Of course, that obligation was sometimes ignored, especially if the monks were having a bad day or food was short. But most would at least offer a crust of bread, a spoonful of pottage, and a patch of floor near the fire. You eat what you're given. Barley pottage, grey, boiled, and salted with tears. You chew slowly and try not to mourn the loss of flavor. Spices exist in this world, but not for you. A pinch of pepper costs more than your cloak. Your spoon is shared. Wiped on cloth that's seen better centuries. Your bowl is wooden, splintered, and probably older than the Magna Carta. Around you, the other pilgrims speak. One limps from an infected foot. Another coughs so hard you wonder how he's still breathing. They trade stories. A woman hoping for her son's healing. A man seeking redemption for adultery. A third who just wanted to see the world while his debts cooled down back home. No one asks why you're here. They understand. In the Middle Ages, pilgrimage was part religion, part social movement, and part escape. It was a way to disappear, without actually vanishing. You try to sleep, but your mind spins. In your world, identity is fixed. A name, a face, a photo. Here, it's just a story, and whether they believe it. There are no IDs or biometric checks here. It's all about your story. In medieval England, your story is your protection. You need one quickly, so you pick the safest lie you can think of, that you're a pilgrim. You tell your first version of it to a stable boy who asks where you're headed. You hesitate, then say Canterbury, not because you're religious, but because it's the only medieval pilgrimage site you know. Under pressure, it works. He nods seriously and goes back to cleaning the stables. That becomes your new truth. You're a pilgrim on your way to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket, the Archbishop famously murdered in Canterbury Cathedral in 1170. His martyrdom made the city one of Europe's most visited holy places. Pilgrims came from everywhere, rich and poor, sick and healthy, devout and desperate, hoping for miracles, forgiveness, or just some rest under God's watch. It's a good cover. Pilgrims were common in the Middle Ages. They moved between towns, stayed at inns and monasteries, traveled in groups when possible, alone when necessary. Some wore the scalloped shell of Santiago. Others carried wooden staffs or painted tokens from previous shrines. Most were poor, many were ill, a few were fugitives, and all were tired. Now you're one of them. The lie is not just for strangers but for yourself too. You repeat it inside your head, smoothing out the details. You're from a distant village, traveling alone because your cousin fell ill, going to Canterbury because your brother had a dream, doing penance for a sin you won't name. You've practiced just enough church Latin to make your whispered prayers sound real. Your story gets you shelter. A gray-robed monk at a small priory listens to your tale and lets you inside. He doesn't ask many questions or seem surprised by your odd accent or limited scripture knowledge. Pilgrims were expected to be strange. You say you've been walking for weeks, and he believes you. Everyone looks worn out here. He shows you to a room, not really a room but a corner of a drafty hall with 3 other pilgrims sleeping side by side. One snores loudly, another mutters in his sleep. You pull your borrowed wool cloak tighter and try not to think about bedbugs. Hospices and monasteries were among the few places in medieval Europe where travelers could sleep without paying. The church was legally and spiritually required to offer charity to pilgrims. Sometimes this was ignored, especially if the monk was having a bad day or the priory was overcrowded. But most would still give at least some stale bread, a spoonful of pottage, and a spot near the fire. You eat what you're given, barley pottage, boiled gray and salted with tears. You chew slowly, trying not to think about seasoning. Spices existed but were not for you. A pinch of pepper costs more than your borrowed cloak. Your spoon is shared, wiped on a cloth that's seen better days. Your bowl is wooden, splintered, probably older than the Magna Carta. Around you, other pilgrims talk. One limps from a foot wound, another coughs so hard you're surprised he's still standing. They share their stories. A woman hoping for her son's healing, a man seeking forgiveness for adultery, another who just wants to see the world while his debts cool at home. None ask why you're here, they understand. Pilgrimage was part religion, part social mobility, and part escape. It was a way to disappear without actually vanishing. You try to sleep, but your thoughts keep turning. In your world, identity is fixed by name and photo ID. Here, it's flexible. You can be anyone as long as you walk a straight line and keep your story consistent. No one here has heard of Google. No one will fact-check your claim that your uncle met a monk in Morset Michel. They'll just nod because they have to. The medieval world runs on trust and fear. The next morning, you wake early, not by choice. There's no privacy, no doors, and the bell tolls for matins well before dawn. The monastery is cold, your breath fogs in the dark. You don't know the prayers but stand with the others, murmuring nonsense syllables quietly. No one notices. Half of them do the same. Afterward, you're handed a heel of bread and told to move on. Pilgrims don't linger. Outside, the town is waking. Vendors roll open stalls, mostly selling vegetables, old tools, or gray-looking meat. You walk past a butcher's shop and try not to stare too long at a headless pig carcass hanging from an iron hook. Flies buzz around it. Meat spoils fast here. Salt was expensive. Freshness was rare. You remember something from a history video. Most medieval towns had a market day once a week. That's when people from nearby villages brought eggs, cheese, root vegetables to sell. You'd have to barter because there were no fixed prices. Everything was negotiable. If you don't know the local currency, silver pennies, half pennies, farthings, you could be cheated. You want to buy something but realize you have nothing to trade, not even a coin. You still have your wristwatch hidden under your wool sleeve. You glance at it, but it means nothing here. No one cares about time. People in this world measure time by bells, prayers, and the sun's position. If it's light, you work. If it's dark, you pray, hide, or sleep. You decide to ask for help. You spot a woman selling oatcakes and approach slowly, trying to look humble but not pitiful. You speak softly, explaining you're on the road, low on supplies, and grateful to meet such a kind person. It's not Shakespearean, but she gives you one cake anyway. Maybe she believes you, maybe she just likes feeding people, maybe she wants your blessing. Pilgrims were holy, or close to holiness. Many townsfolk believed helping a pilgrim earned God's favor. You say a quick, Deus te benedicat, in your best fake Latin accent, meaning, God bless you. She nods, pleased. You chew slowly as you walk the streets. The oat cake is dense, unsweetened, and bitter, maybe wormwood, maybe bad grain. Still, it's food. You count your blessings. 1 oat cake, 2 working legs, no fever yet. You pass a group of children playing in the dirt. One rolls a carved wooden hoop with a stick, another holds a crude rag doll. They stop and stare, not out of fear but curiosity. One points to your wrist. You cover it instinctively. That's when it hits you, you're not out of the woods yet. You have your story, your cloak, your pilgrim status, but you don't have years of dirt under your nails. You don't carry yourself like someone worn down by a lifetime of scarcity. You walk too straight, flinch at smells, make too much eye contact. It's subtle, but they notice. You still don't quite belong. So you drop your gaze, shuffle your feet, mimic the limp of the man you saw last night. You avoid direct questions and learn to listen before speaking. This world doesn't care how smart you are. It cares whether you follow the rules. You slip into the background or vanish completely that night, searching for shelter. A farmer offers his barn in return for chopping wood. You agree before he finishes his offer. After only minutes, your hands blister. He either doesn't see or doesn't mind. Work is work. Pain is expected. Curled up in hay, shivering, you run through your story again, a lone traveler from the north, bound for Canterbury, seeking forgiveness. Always alone. As stars glide overhead, cold and uncaring, one truth becomes clear. Deception is simple in the Middle Ages. Survival isn't. You wake with birdsong and a stiff neck. The straw has shifted, and now a twig digs beneath your shoulder. You sweat at bugs, blinking up at a dull sky and oak branches above. No roof here, just fog and limbs. This is your shelter now. No walls. No door. Only a hollow in the ground, hidden behind a mossy stone off the path. A perfect hiding spot. Not everyone is lucky enough to be offered work. A woman, maybe the farmer's wife or sister, mentioned they needed help gathering firewood and herbs. You said yes before asking more. You were hungry. Still are. So today, you're a forager. Like everything in this era, even this has rules. Rule 1. The forest isn't yours. That's tough to accept if you're from a place where woods are public and nature belongs to everyone. Not so in 14th century England. Forests aren't wilderness, they're owned. Every tree, Every path is claimed by nobles, the crown, or estates. You don't own the acorns, or the rabbits, not even the fallen branches. Gathering sticks may seem harmless, but the wrong bundle in the wrong place could get you whipped, fined, or marked forever. These are the forest laws, born after the Normans and tightened under kings like Henry II. They protect elite hunting grounds, especially royal forests. Even nearby peasants are banned. Killing a deer could mean death. Traps, mutilation. Cut a tree, expect lashes. Rule 2. Stay unseen. You skirt the edges, avoiding open areas. A dull blade and a reused grain sack are your tools. You only collect what nature dropped. Dry twigs, brambles, nothing fresh cut. Just careful scavenging. The woods are still in the early light, broken only by squirrels rustling or a lone pigeon's call. No people. That's good. The best foragers are invisible. But quiet doesn't mean safe. Wolves are mostly gone now, hunted from the south. Bears long extinct. Still, danger remains. Wild boars, angry insects, and worst of all, men. A noise crunching behind you. You freeze. Probably just a deer. Yet your heart races. Bandits are real. These woods shelter the desperate, runaway serfs, criminals, army deserters. They ambush travelers and vanish into the trees. Out here, the king's law barely exists. If someone takes what little you have, there will be no help, no justice. So you lower your head and keep collecting. You're not just gathering firewood. You're also searching for wild herbs. The farmer's wife, yes, definitely his wife, you've decided, handed you a list. Scribbled with markings you can't read, but she spoke the names aloud: yarrow, mugwort, chickweed, comfrey, plantain. Some you recognize. The rest you pretend. These aren't just flavorings, though the food here could certainly use them. They're medicine, insect repellents, even magic to some. You harvest them with care, slipping each into its own cloth pouch. You whisper the names like a chant, part memory, part prayer. A patch of nettles bites your hands. You wince but stay quiet. No gloves. You'll deal with it. Midday comes. You rest near a tree stump, crouched low. Lunch is a crust of rye bread, harder than bone, and a pinch of salt scraped from your pocket's corner. You chew slow, like it matters. There's a nearby stream, shallow, greenish, slick with algae. You cup your hands and drink. The taste is earthy and sharp. You'll regret it. Maybe tonight. Maybe sooner. But the farmer's beer is long gone, and you need something to chase the bread. Under an elm, you spot a clutch of mushrooms. Small, white, delicate. You freeze. Mushrooms are risky. One mistake, and you'll die retching in the dirt, pale-skinned, foaming, breathless. Medieval people knew this. Mothers warned daughters. Stories circled about death caps and destroying angels, mushrooms that kill without mercy. But they also cherished the safe ones, puffballs, morels, field mushrooms. You stare, hesitate, and leave them. Not worth the gamble. The afternoon blurs into thorns and bramble. Your legs sting. Your knees are soaked. A branch rips your sleeve. You'll mend it later, if you can find a needle. Your cloak is ragged. Your tunic smells like every awful thing you've touched today. Your thoughts wander. You wonder how people live like this. Because some do. The poor, widows, orphans, landless souls often survive through foraging. For some, it's a trade. They gather herbs, wood, bark, sell what they can at market. These forest folk aren't admired. They're seen as almost vagrants. Useful if you need sage or birch bark, otherwise ignored. But their knowledge runs deep. They know which bark lowers fevers, which roots stop bleeding, which moss draws out infection. Their secrets are passed by whisper, never written. You wonder how many have already vanished. By late day, your sack is full. Your back throbs. Your fingers bleed from thorns. You retrace your path, the only safe way back. One wrong turn here is fatal. There's no map, no markers. If night falls before you find the road, you may not leave this forest. You break through the trees just as the sky grays. The farmer waits near the fields. He looks over your haul, grunts once, maybe approval. His wife says nothing, takes the herbs, and drops a turnip into your hand. That's your payment. You want to argue, to say you labored all day for a root, but you don't. Complaining here isn't smart. Gratitude is safer. So you nod. You say thank you. She doesn't smile. But she doesn't strike you either. You eat the turnip raw, crouched by the farm's fading fire. It's bitter. It barely fills the space in your stomach. But it's something. That night you sleep in the barn again. The cows are snoring. A chicken watches you from a beam, far too close to your head. You lie on a pile of old straw, staring up at the rafters. Your thoughts drift back to the forest, its silence, its strict rules, its quiet judgment. You were only there for a day. Some people never leave. You thought you were ready. You downloaded PDFs, watched hour-long videos on medieval linguistics, even practiced phrases out loud in your car like a lunatic. God, you had muttered proudly in the mirror. Acumen from Faerin. You were sure you had this. You were going to blend in, fool everyone. But now that you're here, really here, standing in the market square of a medieval English town, surrounded by smells you can't even describe and people speaking what sounds like gravel in their mouths, you realize you don't understand a word. It's not just the accent. It's not just the slang. It's the fact that they're not even speaking the language you studied. You chose Old English, figured it was a safe bet. Anglo-Saxon roots. You remembered Beowulf. But Beowulf was written 400 years before this. And the people here? They're speaking Middle English, but not the kind Chaucer wrote. This version is rougher, faster, filled with French loanwords and strange regional quirks. You try to follow a conversation between two traders but can't tell if they're arguing about fish or accusing each other of witchcraft. One man yells across the square. Hoy, that Bion Reeve what's told me off why soakin' it he. You blink. Sorry? He squints at you. Bay daft or Flemish? You mumble something about having a sore throat and shuffle away. Mental note, don't speak unless absolutely necessary. Back home, you thought language would be the least of your problems. You expected disease, violence, dysentery to kill you first. But now it's clear, your mouth is the real threat. The moment you speak, it's obvious you don't belong. You might look the part, maybe even smell the part by now, but you talk like someone raised by monks and time travelers. Your word choice is off. Your cadence is strange. And heaven help you if someone tries to joke. You have no idea when to laugh. A baker makes a comment about a hedge priest sausage. You laugh nervously. From his face, you're not sure if it was a joke or an insult. You start miming. A lot. Hungry? Rub your belly. Tired? Point at the sun and yawn. Need directions? Just walk with confidence and hope someone follows. This isn't communication. It's charades for survival. Later that day, in the shadow of the parish church, you overhear two kids arguing over a sheep. The older one shouts, "Nay, I faint saw it go by the breck." The smaller one snaps back, "Nay, 'twas thine eyes gone adult, fool." You couldn't feel more foreign if you tried. You start cataloging phrases in your head, trying to guess their meaning. Faint might mean eager or glad. Breck could be a hill or a field, or maybe not. You don't even know what century you're in anymore, linguistically. And then there's the French. Since the Norman conquest, it's soaked into the language like spilled wine and linen. The nobles speak a smoother dialect, laced with French and Latin. The peasants? Harsh consonants, nasal vowels. You can literally hear who owns land and who sleeps in the dirt, just by how they say the word. Bread. You try saying, "Pardon," to a nobleman. He nods. You try the same word with a stable hand. He spits at your feet. Desperate to communicate, you dig deep into your memory for a bit of Latin. Big mistake. A friar overhears you reciting a textbook phrase and immediately asks where you trained. Panicking, you blurt out, "Rome." He frowns. And then comes the barrage. Questions about church councils and doctrines you've never even heard of. You fake a cough and limp away like you're injured. New rule: no Latin, unless it's part of a prayer and you're not the first one saying it. Later, you find yourself at a cook shop, trying to buy what looks like a pasty. You point. The cook stares at you. 2 farthings, she says. You hold out a handful of coins. She picks out 4, then slaps your wrist and takes a 5th. You blink. "No more en yesterorn's bread for you," she mutters, handing you something that smells like a barn floor. You nod, saying instinctively, "Cheers." The room goes silent. Everyone freezes. You realize too late, cheers doesn't exist yet. It sounds foreign. Wrong. Maybe obscene. Someone chuckles. Another narrows his eyes. You blurt out, "God give you good morrow," and bolt out the door. Another surprise. Reading doesn't help. You thought signs would guide you. They don't. Hardly anything is written, and when it is, it's inconsistent, phonetic, and barely legible. Spelling changes from one day to the next. A house might be spelled Alias today and Alafs tomorrow. Only clerics write well, and they write in Latin. Even street names are confusing. Some are just pictures. One tanner has a crude painting of a cow and a knife above his stall. Another? Just a turnip nailed to a plank. You feel illiterate. Which, to be fair, puts you in the same boat as most people here. But the worst part isn't the confusion. It's the danger. Say the wrong thing, and people don't just think you're strange. They might assume you're mad, or foreign, or cursed. One night, a drunk bumps into you. You say, "Sorry, my fault." He squints. "My fault what? You confessing to witchery, are you?" You quickly switch. "Forgive me. I was clumsy." That seems to calm him. You realize, in this world, words can hurt you. There's no Yelp. No customer support. No sarcastic oops to walk back a blunder. Here, people live close to violence, suspicion, and insult. And you are always one poorly chosen sentence away from being called a heretic, a spy, or simply not right in the head. Over time, you adapt. You keep your words short and simple. You mimic what others say, even if you don't fully understand it. You say I instead of yes, nay instead of no. You gesture often. You never ask questions unless someone else does first. You listen more than you speak. And it helps. By day 4, you can order food without being cheated. You know the proper response to common greetings. You even made a local boy laugh by saying, "ass," at just the right moment. You're still an outsider, but at least now you seem harmless. That night, lying on the itchy straw of the monastery loft, staring up at the dark beams, you realize you've survived not because of what you knew, but because of how fast you learned to copy. Because here, language isn't a tool. It's a test. And every conversation is a pop quiz in a dialect you don't speak, with real consequences if you fail. You think of your phone, the translate apps, the internet. You think of how many times you've Googled a phrase or slang term. That luxury is gone. Now all you have are your ears and your memory. And if you say the wrong thing tomorrow, really the wrong thing, you might not get another chance to say anything at all. It begins with a cramp, not dramatic, just a dull, persistent ache in your stomach, like you skipped lunch or ate something off. You don't think much of it. You've had worse after airport sushi. But within an hour, you're curled up behind a pigsty, clutching your stomach and praying to a god whose presence apparently smells like manure. This isn't just a rough day, it's a full-blown medieval stomach disaster. You tried to be cautious. You boiled water. You stuck to things that looked like bread. You avoided anything too colorful. But the issue isn't the food, it's everything. Your body, raised on pasteurized milk, treated water, and sanitized supermarkets, has no clue how to survive the bacterial battlefield that is medieval Europe. Put simply, you're soft. Your main suspect? The pottage. Pottage is what they serve when they don't want to serve real food. It's a thick, soupy mix of grains and whatever didn't spoil in the past few days. Cabbage? Maybe. Turnip? Possibly. Frog? Depends on the cook's mood and protein philosophy. The same pot is reused day after day, endlessly refilled. A medieval version of bottomless stew, flavored with despair and whatever accidentally fell in. You knew all this. You ate it anyway. Now your gut feels like it's reliving the Norman invasion. By sundown, you're alternating between cold sweats and chills, wrapped in your scratchy wool cloak like a miserable medieval burrito. Your face is pale. Your lips are dry. You try sipping beer, weak, watery ale, the safest drink around, but even that turns against you. This isn't just food poisoning. It's your immune system sounding every alarm at once. Remember, germ theory doesn't exist yet. No one knows about bacteria. No one really knows what causes illness. They blame bad air, or imbalanced humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Depending on what's out of balance, treatments include leeches, vomiting, purging, or prayer. Most people never figure out what made them sick. They either recover or vanish. So when you wake up the next morning, groggy but breathing, you've already outperformed a decent chunk of the population. A nun finds you slumped behind a Dominican friary, looking like a broken scarecrow. You try to stand, but the world tilts, and your legs collapse like dough. She doesn't flinch. She lifts your chin, checks your eyes, and pushes something bitter and leathery into your mouth. It tastes like bark soaked in vinegar and regret. You try to spit it out. She hushes you firmly, the way only someone who's done this 1,000 times can. You chew. You swallow. You don't throw up. Victory. She doesn't ask who you are or turn you in. She just presses a coarse cloth to your head and murmurs a Latin prayer. You catch a few words: mercy, healing, something about humans being like dust. You nod weakly. That last part sounds right. This is one rare upside of medieval life. While medicine is terrible, charity is deeply ingrained, especially through the church. Religious orders run basic infirmaries, and monasteries often have a monk or nun who tends to the sick, even strangers. Hospitality is sacred. You're lucky, really lucky. And so were those before you. They'll treat you even if you can't pay. Here's another twist: you're not alone. Half the town is sick with something: coughs, skin infections, fevers. It's like a walking petri dish. Sanitation is just an idea, hygiene is seasonal, and medicine is mostly guesswork. And yet, somehow, people survive. For the next 2 days, you barely move. The friary lets you lie on a straw mat near the wall, not quite inside the infirmary, but close enough for someone to keep an eye on you. A girl brings you thin broth in a chipped wooden bowl. You manage a few sips. You're so exhausted it feels like it's built into your bones. Every joint aches. Your spine feels like it's been rolled down a hill. Your breath smells like you've been chewing onions in a tomb, and you're pretty sure no one changed your shirt while you were unconscious. Later, when you finally manage to sit up without tipping over, you hear the bell tower striking 6. Noon is marked here not by watches or apps but by bells, 7 canonical hours each, a holy checkpoint. You learn to live by them, almost by accident. You become a creature of bells, hunger, stomach growls, and the occasional fever dream of St. Peter riding a flaming goat. Okay, maybe that last part was the fever. By the 3rd day, you're walking, slowly. You help sweep the courtyard to show your gratitude. Your legs wobble, like they forgot what being vertical means, but you don't fall. The friar overseeing you nods in approval and offers you another lump of that foul root. Maybe wormwood, maybe licorice, maybe just dirt. You chew it dutifully. He claps you on the shoulder. You take it as a blessing, or a warning. You've been really sick, but you didn't die. That makes you a statistical outlier. Historically, many people didn't get better. Illness in the Middle Ages could mean anything from a passing bug to your last few days alive. Infant mortality was horrific. An average life expectancy hovered around 35, but that's skewed by childhood deaths. If you made it past 10, you had a decent chance of living to 50. But illness was never a surprise. It was a companion, part of life. You expected it, endured it, and when it took a neighbor, child, or spouse, you grieved briefly and carried on. There was always more to do, another fire to stoke, another field to plow, another mouth to feed. You learned something else during recovery. People don't talk about sickness the way you're used to. No long venting sessions, no detailed symptom updates, no "How are you holding up?" texts. They just shrug. It's the season, they say. Or, it's God's will. Or simply, it happens. And it makes sense. When illness is everywhere and medicine barely works, talking about it doesn't help, so they don't. It's humbling, and a little terrifying, because if you fall sick again, and you probably will, You might not be so lucky. You might not find the nun. You might not be near a friary. You might just collapse in a gutter and never wake up. The next day, you feel strong enough to leave. The friar pats you on the back. The girl with the broth smiles shyly. You try to say thank you in the local dialect, but it probably sounds more like, I kneel in the direction of your turnip. They don't correct you. You walk out of the friary into the morning light, a little bent, a lot grateful, and 7 pounds lighter. Everything smells stronger now: bread, smoke, dung, sweat. The world feels sharp, real, and present. You survived. And in the Middle Ages, that counts as a good day. You wake up with a new appreciation. Without your bag, it takes you a few seconds to realize what's missing. You pat the ground around you, check under your straw mat, then under the mat of the man beside you who's snoring loudly, like a charging ox. Your satchel, the one that held your last pair of socks, 2 small coins, a now precious bar of emergency chocolate, and your hidden compass, is gone. Vanished. Along with any remaining hope that you're starting to blend in here. You sit up and look around. It's morning, in the back alley of a town that doesn't know your name and wouldn't care if you dropped dead in it. Somewhere a bell tolls the hour. Nearby, a vendor shouts about cabbage in a voice rough enough to tenderize meat. Life goes on. Just not your life. Not as planned. Let's be clear, you've just been robbed, and nobody cares. There's no police station, no mounted guards patrolling with notepads and radios. Number 911 dispatcher asking, "What's your emergency?" The only law enforcement around is the bailiff, and his main job is making sure your taxes get paid, not returning your missing socks. You try mentioning your loss to a woman sweeping her doorstep. She glances up, shrugs, and mutters something that roughly translates to, "Welcome to town." You tell a local friar. He frowns sympathetically, says a prayer for your lost satchel, and suggests maybe it was God's will. You mention the word stolen to a baker, who laughs so hard he nearly drops a tray of rye bread. Not because he thinks you're lying, but because, of course, it was stolen. What else would happen in medieval towns? Theft isn't an outlier, it's part of the natural order, right alongside mud, poor dental hygiene, and sudden fires. Everyone is poor. Everyone is desperate. Anything left unattended is considered fair game. That's why locals tie valuables to their belts, tuck them into hidden pouches, or even sew them into their clothes. Wealthy merchants often hire boys, not as apprentices, but as moving alarms. Even nuns keep a wary eye on their coin purses. Sanctity doesn't stand a chance against scarcity. And knives? They're not accessories, they're necessities. Every peasant has one. Every merchant carries one. Even small children sometimes have little blades, not for fighting, but for cutting bread, slicing apples, and if absolutely necessary, making sure no one takes their bread or apples. Theft isn't just tolerated, in many cases, it's expected. Eventually, you return to the friary where you've been staying, where you recently recovered from your first medieval stomach disaster. You recount the theft again, with a bit more drama this time. You add sorrow and lean into the tragic tone. Brother Thomas, or maybe Brother Matthew, the monks blur together, listens with polite gravity. He disappears into a side room, then returns a few minutes later, placing something into your palm. A knife. It's small, rusted, the blade dull, and the handle cracked, but it fits your hand. You try to hand it back, but he doesn't let go. He makes a gesture, palm flat, knife up, and walks away. You don't need a full grasp of the local dialect to get the message. Keep it with you. Always. Historically speaking, this is not unusual. In fact, for someone like you, alone, unfamiliar, and extremely vulnerable, this is practically a rite of passage. Justice didn't work the way modern visitors might expect. While courts and laws existed, actual enforcement was rare and wildly. A constable might exist in theory, but his authority was local, his power limited, and his priorities heavily skewed toward protecting landowners, collecting fines, and making sure the tavern didn't turn into a murder pit every Saturday night. You, an unknown foreigner with no local kin or guild membership, are not someone anyone's going to stick their neck out for. Guilds, powerful associations of craftsmen and merchants, protected their own. Outsiders, those not under guild protection or tied into a household, were fair game. And you? You're not in a guild. You're not from a household. You are a walking opportunity. Markets are the worst places, crowded, loud, and full of chances to be relieved of your belongings. Street performers attract gawkers. Gawkers create crowds. Crowds create cover. And somewhere in that chaos, a cut purse practices his art. Theft is so common it's factored into every transaction. The merchant selling you a dusty apple has already accepted that 3 more will go missing before noon. The baker keeps his coin jar buried in flour. The butcher keeps his cleaver sharp and visible. When thieves do get caught, the punishment depends on who they stole from. Punishments are theatrical, often gruesome, and wildly inconsistent. For minor thefts, public humiliation is common. A thief might be tied to the pillory and pelted with rotten turnips, or forced to wear a wooden plaque proclaiming, "I stole a chicken," while being paraded through the streets. Repeat offenders or those unlucky enough to steal from the wrong person might lose a hand, an ear, or both. In some places, thieves are branded with hot irons to mark them for life. In others, they're hanged. No trial, no appeal, just a rope and an audience. You quickly realize that while the law is slow to act, it's spectacularly vicious when it does. But here's the important part. Most thieves are never caught, because no one is watching, and no one really wants to. Your instincts sharpen. You start tying your coin pouch inside your tunic, walking with your hand over it in crowds, sleeping with it tucked under your ribs. You learn to recognize the signs: someone following too closely, hands hidden under a cloak, questions asked too casually. You also learn the art of preemptive destitution, walking like you have nothing, dressing even shabbier than you are, pretending to limp so thieves assume you're not worth the effort. Your new life strategy: be uninteresting. You meet a man near the baker's stool. He's missing 3 teeth and has a knife scar running from his jaw to his collarbone. He offers you half a cabbage and a story in exchange, asks for nothing. You eat the cabbage, hear the story, and leave with all your belongings. Progress. Not all theft is for survival. Sometimes it's professional. Medieval cities had entire underground economies, gangs of cut purses, highwaymen working just outside town fences, operating under the guise of scrap traders. Even churchyards weren't sacred. Pickpockets worked during services because half the congregation was too deep in prayer to notice their purses vanishing. Taverns were prime hunting grounds. Travelers drank more, talked louder, and kept looser hands on their goods. Some innkeepers even encouraged the practice, skimming the unlucky and taking a cut from the thieves in return. You've met at least 3 pickpockets. 2 robbed you. 1 taught you how to walk like someone not worth robbing, that one you almost trust. Almost. By week's end, you've hardened. You don't speak unless you must. You carry your knife, dull though it is, as if it matters. You nod instead of smile. You walk wide around beggars wearing boots nicer than yours. A local calls you wise. You take it as a compliment. You trade a half onion for a crust of bread and what might be sausage. You eat it anyway. That night, curled behind the fiery wall, you sleep with one hand on your pouch and the other on your blade. For the first time since you arrived in this unpredictable, mud-soaked century, you wake up with all your things. You learn your next lesson before you've even finished your breakfast. It happens in a tavern, or what passes for one. The food is warm, the bread nearly fresh, and the stew only mildly offensive. You've started to feel something like confidence. A local woman even smiled at you as she refilled your bowl. For a second, it feels like maybe you're getting the hang of this century. Then you make a mistake. You sit at the wrong table. You pick it because it's near the fire. Your feet are numb and your clothes still smell like last night's rain. There are 3 other men at the table, all eating, none talking. You assume, in your modern way, that a table is just a table. It is not. The one closest to you stops chewing. The man across from him slowly lowers his spoon. The third, older and broad-shouldered, with hands like tree roots, simply stares. He doesn't yell. He just stares. You feel it like heat or frost. You stand up. Nobody tells you why you can't sit there. Nobody needs to. You already know. You're not the same. Not in dress. Not in posture. Not in class. In medieval England, social hierarchy isn't just about power, it's about place. And you're out of yours. You take your stew to a bench by the door. It's colder but safer. You begin to notice it everywhere. The way some people don't step aside when you pass. The way others bow but only slightly. The tilt of a head. The cut of a tunic. The color of a belt. These aren't fashion choices. They're signals. Class isn't a guess here. It's a script everyone plays their part in. Lords command. Knights strut. Guildsmen puff their chests. Peasants look down. Servants vanish into the background. Even children know who they're supposed to bow to. It's instinct. Cultural muscle memory. And you? You're a blank page. Which is dangerous. You bow too deeply to a merchant's wife. She laughs. Her guards don't. You raise your voice at a servant who shorted you on bread. He spits in your stew and no one does a thing. You try to explain yourself once, out loud, to a baker. I didn't know. He looks at you like you're an idiot. Then you shouldn't be here. There. Historically speaking, this wasn't rudeness, it was survival. Medieval society was rigid by necessity. There were no resumes, no ID cards, no LinkedIn pages. Your clothes, your speech, your posture, that was your identity. Those were the clues that told others how to treat you. And if you didn't follow the rules, the whole system frayed. Most people were born into their station and died in it. If you were a villain, a kind of unfree peasant, you couldn't just become a merchant. If you were a tanner, you were expected to stay a tanner. The few who climbed ranks usually did so through the church or military service, and even then it took a generation or 2. Everyone else stayed firmly in their lane. You meet a man named Will near the blacksmith's store. He looks at you with a kind of exhausted pity and tells you the rules. Not all of them, that would take weeks, but enough to keep you from offending the next person you speak to. You don't touch anyone wearing silk, he says. Not even if they're choking. You blink. What if they need help? Then pray for them, he says from a respectful distance. He explains that colors are codes. Fur-lined cloaks are power, blue, and purple are reserved for nobility. Green is fine, unless it's too fine. And linen only if it's been washed recently. Yours hasn't. Will also tells you this: you've been walking wrong. Apparently your gait is too loose, too confident. You don't step softly enough. You don't lower your head fast enough. You don't make space quickly enough when a higher-ranked person walks by. You move like someone who's never been hit for moving wrong, he says. They'll fix that, and they almost do. That afternoon, you tried to get a better spot near the public well. The water's cleanish, and the sun is warm. You step ahead of a girl carrying a heavy pail. She looks about 13, face sunburned, hands raw. An older woman behind her shouts. You don't catch the words, but you get the tone. Everyone looks. You freeze. The girl glares at you with a kind of weary fury and says, "Where's your badge?" You don't have one. Apprentices in town wear pins or stitch symbols. They show you belong to someone. If you don't, you're a stranger. And strangers are beneath everyone. You step back. She doesn't thank you. She shouldn't have to. You start paying attention. You notice that even eye contact is stratified. A noble doesn't look at a merchant. A merchant doesn't look at a peasant. A peasant doesn't look at anyone unless spoken to. And you? You look at everyone like you're trying to read subtitles. You learn to lower your gaze, to speak less, to speak softer. To say, "My lord," even when it sticks in your throat. Eventually, people stop looking at you with suspicion. Now they look through you, like a servant. Like you belong. Progress. There are benefits. Strange as it sounds, being invisible means you overhear things, plans, rumors, prices, secrets. You start to understand the town, not just by its layout but by its tensions. Who's sleeping with whom? Who's stealing flour? Who's plotting to skip tithes? You become a shadow with ears. You also become tired. It is exhausting to carry the weight of invisibility. You begin to dream of modern things, not for comfort, but for clarity. A line, a menu, a name tag, something to tell you where you stand. Because here you never quite know. You're not noble. You're not guild. You're not clergy. You're not a peasant. You're not a pilgrim, at least not a convincing one. You're a gap in the system. Tolerated but not trusted. A body in borrowed clothing. One night a boy bumps into you in the dark and mutters, "Watch it, Lowworn. You should be angry. You should be indignant." But all you feel is relief. He thinks he knows what you are. That's the closest you've come to belonging. You're sitting on a low stone wall, chewing something that was allegedly bread. You make a mistake. You're trying to find north. You don't mean to show off. You just want to know where you buried your emergency items 2 days ago in the woods. You dig into the pouch you've sewn into your tunic lining and palm the compass. Just a glance. A peek. It's small, discreet, and blessedly accurate, unlike medieval directions, which seem based entirely on how loudly someone can point. Unfortunately, you're not as discreet as you think. A boy passing by stops, eyes wide. "Is that a jewel?" he asks, in something halfway between French and curiosity. You snap the compass shut and shove it back into your tunic. But it's too late. He's already shouting for someone. His uncle, maybe, or a local gossip merchant. Within minutes, you've got a small crowd staring at you like you've grown a second head, and it's singing in Latin. A woman crosses herself. A man mutters about Eastern sorcery. A priest somewhere nearby starts walking your way. You walk away casually. You walk away calmly, absolutely not at a pace that would be considered fleeing, just brisk enough. This is your warning. Nothing screams not from here like pulling out an item no one can name. Even the simplest modern object, a pen, a light, a zipper, a plastic button, can trigger suspicion. Not always because it's terrifying. Sometimes it's just unfamiliar enough to be interesting. And in a town where interesting is one step away from dangerous, that's not a compliment. Remember, the medieval worldview doesn't make space for weird but harmless things. They're either part of the natural order, or they're not. And if they're not, they probably came from the devil, or the east, or both. Later that afternoon, as you lean against the friar's wall pretending to read a religious carving, the local priest finds you. He's not hostile, just curious. Too curious. He asks where you're from. You say, far away. He asks what you do. You say, pilgrim. He asks if pilgrims commonly carry compasses that glow slightly in the sun and spin like enchanted beetles. You change the subject. He doesn't. Historically, priests were often the most educated people in town. They could read. They had access to old texts. And worst of all, they had time. They were also charged with maintaining moral and spiritual order, which in practice meant deciding who was a threat. While witch trials weren't yet in full swing in the 1300s, heretics, sorcerers, and suspicious foreigners were definitely on the radar. The church didn't need proof, just a sense of unease. A few whispers. A failure to attend Mass regularly. Or a compass you couldn't explain. That night, you make your way back to the forest, not the edge like before, but deep past the berry bushes and the stinging nettles. Past the tree where you tripped last week and cursed so loudly the squirrels haven't returned. You find the spot. You dig with a flat stone. Your hands are freezing. Eventually, you uncover your stash. A small tin of waterproof matches. Your backup compass. A protein bar. And a laminated card that reads emergency contact. You stare at it. There is no emergency contact here. Just you. You bury the compass again, deeper this time, wrapped in linen. You hesitate, then bury the protein bar too. You don't need it drawing attention. You keep the matches. If someone asks, you'll say the friar taught you flint tricks. You lie well. Now, in medieval towns, being from somewhere else buys you about 10 minutes of grace. After that, people want details, names, maps, saints. You can't just say, I'm from a distant land, and expect a polite nod. Everyone in medieval Europe is from somewhere. And everyone knows someone who's been there. Slip up once, and people assume you're lying. Slip up twice, and they assume you're dangerous. You've slipped up twice this week alone. So you change tactics. You get quieter. You speak less. You start bowing more. You mutter a lot. If someone asks a question you don't know how to answer, you look pained and say it's a matter of penance. People nod solemnly. Mystery is safer than mistakes. Let's be clear about something. Many evil people are not stupid. They know their world. They know how knives should look, how fabric should stretch, how threads should unravel. They'd never seen a seam like the one on your undershirt. You tell them it's a monk's design. They narrow their eyes. Monks don't sew like that. A baker eyes the smooth finish of your boots. Modern leather soles dyed to look crude. Strange tanning, he says. You mumble something about foreign oxen. A merchant fingers the synthetic cord tied around your belt. He tests its strength. What plant makes this? He asks. You say. It's a rare northern herb. His eyebrows lift. You're running low on believable stories. Eventually, someone calls you a mystic, not as a compliment. It starts after you help a kid who scraped his knee. You cleaned it with wine, wrapped it in a clean cloth, and said nothing magical. But the child healed too fast. A neighbor noticed. Then another. Now people think you know things. Being labeled a mystic isn't always dangerous. Some are tolerated, especially the old, quiet, and deeply religious. You're none of those. You're young. You're an outsider. And half the time, you don't even know which saint's name to say when someone sneezes. Here's the real danger: you're interesting. And in medieval times, that's rarely a good thing. Interesting people attract attention. Attention leads to questions. Questions lead to tests. And you do not want to be tested. So you start hiding more, not just your belongings, but your identity, your personality, your stories. You copy local speech. You learn which saints people like. You start dressing in duller clothes. You come up with a phrase. I go where the Lord leads. It sounds holy. It's vague. And most importantly, it shuts people up. You say it often. One day at the market, you notice someone else who doesn't belong. She's wearing sandals in winter. Her cloak is way too new. She asks the price of a pie in flawless schoolbook Latin. The vendor narrows his eyes. You step away. She'll either adapt or she won't, not your problem. By now, your instincts are sharp. If something looks too shiny, you hide it. If someone stares too long, you leave. If a priest smiles too kindly, you map out an exit. You know which alleys to run through, which dogs to avoid, which bread stalls don't scam pilgrims. You sleep with a knife. You pray with conviction. You've told 5 different people you're on your way to Santiago. You've never even seen a map of Santiago. But you say it like you mean it. And really, that's survival now. Never losing face. Never seeming like a magician. Never sounding like a liar. Never smelling like modern soap. By the end of the week, people have a story about you. Quiet. Strange. From the East, maybe? Maybe touched by a saint. Or something else. But no one tries to burn you. No one hauls you to court. No one finds your stash. Not yet. And in the Middle Ages, not yet counts as a win. You're learning how to vanish. Not literally. You still walk through muddy alleys like a hungry ghost in borrowed clothes. But now you know how to shrink yourself. To smooth over the parts of you that don't belong. To stop drawing attention. Your accent's still there. But your confidence isn't. You only speak when spoken to. You move smaller. React slower. You don't ask questions. You don't grin too wide. You try, more and more successfully, to fade. And it's working. Today, a merchant actually looked past you. That's when you realize. In medieval life, being ignored is a kind of milestone. Let's be clear. Fitting in doesn't mean you belong. It just means people stop checking too closely. And in the 1300s, invisibility is your best protection. You start with your body. You've lost weight. Not that you had much. Your ribs now peek through. You walk slower. You've learned to move with the crowd, not against it. You copy the walk of the weary, the bent back posture of someone used to being overlooked. Your clothes help too. That tunic you traded for? It's now a filthy, itchy, faded mess of coarse wool. But finally it doesn't stand out. The cloth wrapped around you no longer smells like a foreigner, just foul, like everyone else. You even smeared some soot on your face this morning. Just a bit. It works better than any disguise. A clean face draws suspicion. You've learned to speak less and listen more. You've started to understand the rhythm of things, not always the words, but the tone, the pauses, the topics people care about. Bread, rain, gossip. The baker's daughter went missing for 2 days. The tanner's wife had twins, again. There's a rumor that the tax collector's mule was cursed by a beggar. You repeat these stories when the moment is right, carefully. You never claim to know anything. Just that you heard it on the road. No one questions that. Everyone hears things on the road. But you've also learned what not to say. You avoid prices, dates, and any measurements. You don't say numbers you're unsure of. You never say kilometer, or coffee, or Tuesday, unless someone else says it first. You've cut out phrases like makes sense, and no problem. One time you said, sure, and the shoemaker's apprentice stared at you like you'd grown a second head. Now you just say, very well, and nod. You nod a lot. Even still, people sometimes give you strange looks. Maybe it's your hands, too clean, too soft. Maybe it's the way you flinch when someone coughs. Maybe it's that you never seem to know where you're going. But more and more, those glances are brief. People have bigger worries. The weather. The bishop's latest order. The price of barley climbing again. You're not their concern. You're barely even interesting anymore. And you count that as a win. You've even carved out a routine. Wait before the bells. Line up at the friary for weak broth. Avoid eye contact with the man who once tried to sell you his wife's hair. Help unload crates at the docks in exchange for half a fish. Return it when you find more maggots than meat. Try the baker instead. Fail to haggle. Settle for crusts. Eat while perched on a step, pretending you're simply passing through. You even smile once. When a child drops a turnip and you catch it before it hits the mud, you hand it back. She looks at you like you gave her treasure. You feel a little more human. You're even adjusting to the smells. Well, not enjoying them. But you're not retching anymore. You don't cover your nose when passing the tannery. You don't dry heave when the wind carries the scent of the latrines uphill. You don't gag at the open-air sight of skinned animals. You just squint and walk faster. That's progress. Someone calls you pilgrim. For the first time, it doesn't sound sarcastic. They ask where you're headed. You say, Santiago. Then add, eventually. They nod. Everyone says, eventually. They offer you a crust of bread. You thank them in their dialect. The verb tense is wrong, but close enough. They invite you to sit. You do. For an hour, you're not an outsider. You're just another traveler. Sore feet, empty pockets, and stories you're not quite ready to share. You sit with your back against the wall, eating stale bread beside someone whose name you didn't catch. You share a silence that doesn't feel uncomfortable. You listen to the church bells. You watch chickens fight in the mud, and for a moment, you almost believe you fit in. Almost. But you don't. You miss your shoes. You miss ice. You miss toothpaste, real bandages, and being able to say, "I'm hungry," without fearing robbery or suspicion. You miss being understood. Not just your words, but your whole world. People talking about movies, about weekends, about grocery stores. Stores, car problems, birthday plans, none of that matters here. In this place, it's all about survival. And survival doesn't leave room for small talk. Still, you've adapted. You blend in. You get by. You've realized that vanishing isn't just an illusion, it's a necessary skill. Tonight, curled up in the corner of a smoky storeroom, wrapped in a moldy blanket, and clinging to the last trace of someone else's kindness, you almost feel like you belong to this century. You never truly will, but for now, you're tolerated. And in the Middle Ages, that's the closest you'll get to peace. You lie awake on a bed made of straw, if you can even call it that. Your feet are filthy. Your tunic sticks to your skin like soggy burlap. The air isn't warm. It's thick with the scent of wood smoke, sweat, and the sour smell of rotting vegetables from the alley. You shift your weight, trying to avoid the sharp straw or whatever crawls along the wall beside you. You close your eyes and think of home. Not a person, not even a place, just a faucet. A shining, modern, miraculous faucet pouring cold, clean water on demand. You remember brushing your teeth, flushing toilets, deodorant, shampoo, soap, clean socks, and then the rooster crows. You groan, a sound now as common to you as your aching joints, and sit up. It's morning again. Somehow, you've made it through another night. Let's take stock. You've survived. You haven't exactly thrived, and you definitely haven't passed as a local. But you've endured days filled with grime, sickness, fear, and failure. You've found food, faked Latin, made up a backstory, hidden your tech, dodged execution, and discovered that yes, you can sleep through bells, fleas, and curfews, but never all at once. At this point, it's not just about survival anymore. It's about staying sane. Medieval life isn't just tough, it's unrelenting. Your sore muscles and bruised pride mean nothing. There's no restart, no weekends, no therapy. Just survival, over and over again. You've started to understand the rhythm. Morning bells. The scent of stale bread. The exact way to nod so you're polite but not submissive. The cautious tones of people unsure if you belong, but not curious enough to question you. The town accepts you the only way it knows how, by ignoring you unless you slip up. And you've nearly slipped more than once. When the priest asked about your relic, when you said okay instead of very well, when you pronounced Ave Maria like a tourist ordering tapas. But each time you adjusted. Learned a rule no one writes down: don't stand out. If they remember you, you're a threat. If they forget you, you're safe. Now you're just another worn-out face in the market. You've learned to live without no forks, no spare clothes, no privacy, no comfort. The most advanced item you own is a rusty knife, and your growing instinct for danger. Your best meal this week? A pot of bean-filled pottage. Your proudest moment? Not throwing up after drinking water from a foot-soaking bucket. Your happiest? Washing your face in a stream that didn't sting. And your body? It's adapting. Blisters toughen. Nausea fades. You start picking up on local speech. Your eyes adjust to candlelight. You're even forgetting what your phone looked like. Time travel has its secrets. Like how boredom gnaws at your mind during long hours with nothing to do. Or how weird it feels to go days without hearing music, seeing glass, or laughing on purpose. Or how quiet the world used to be. No electric hums, no engines. Just fire, bells, footsteps, voices. And somehow, part of you starts to like it. Not the dirt or the hunger, but the stillness. The clarity. Life here is stripped down, eat, sleep, work, survive. No emails. No bills. No constant chaos. Just soup, the weather, and the guy eyeing your coin pouch a little too long. But don't get sentimental. This isn't a romantic past. It's a brutal one. You've seen too many coughs that don't get better. Too many kids breaking under heavy loads. Too many silent goodbyes. You get it now, deep in your bones, that most people didn't live history. They endured it. Night comes again. You lie back on your straw mat, a little less itchy, a little more worn down. You listen to footsteps fading outside the stone wall. You tighten your cloak. Hold your pouch close. Whisper a half-believed prayer, just in case. Tomorrow will be the same. Cold. Hungry. Confusing. But tonight you're still alive. And in medieval England, that's enough.